Hey folks, we've got a little bit of a different episode lined up for you today. So, a lot of people don't know, we have a mental health issue in the tech space, right? And so, to give you just an idea here, I've got some statistics here, and I share a lot more in the show. But for example, 51% of people in the tech space have been diagnosed with a mental health condition. 57% reported burnout. 71% said their productivity was reduced by a mental health issue. Clearly, that's an issue. I mean, just the burnout statistic, 57%, is awfully high. And so, I've got Eric on the show today. Both of us, we share our own experiences while dealing with mental health issues in the tech space. We talk about more statistics, where these statistics come from. We talk about some coping mechanisms and lots more on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, it's a new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working in the trenches day in and day out to keep the digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Surwich, and I've got Eric Siron on as usual. How's it going, Eric?
Hey, Andy, how's it going?
Doing good. Can't complain. So, we have a little bit of a slightly different topic lined up for today. So typically we're very in the weeds on the tech, right? But occasionally we kind of touch on this soft skills stuff. And today we are certainly touching on the soft skills thing. And it's something of I don't know how I want to explain it. It's a topic that some people aren't comfortable with, but it's a topic that we need to normalize people talking about. At the same time, I am talking about mental health in tech. And so I've got some statistics that we'll start with here in a little bit, and then we'll get into some personal stories for myself and Eric as well. And we've got some interesting stuff to share with you today and talk about this important topic. So that said, we, of course, have all of our usual recurring segments at the beginning of every show. So let's get into that. The first thing I want to make sure I mention is you can find the show on multiple platforms. So the show is available on YouTube. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts. Chances are, wherever you consume your content, you can find the show. Now, we also like to include as many community comments and stories as we possibly can. I love that about the show. Whenever I can share a comment or something of that nature, you can reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. That'll get you into our mailboxes. Otherwise, you can certainly leave a comment on one of our YouTube videos, or you can also comment on the Spotify episodes as well, too. So that said, I want to do a special call out here because as of this recording, it's October 5th, which means Halloween's coming up soon. And I'm in the process of organizing a SysAdmin Horror Stories episode. And so I'm planning on recording that probably third week of October for release around Halloween. Eric, you're going to be in that episode. I've decided. I know I haven't asked you yet, but you're just going to be there, right?
Oh, fine.
So,
are you going to haunt me if I don't?
Sure, yeah. Of course, we're going to have our good friend Paul Schnackenberg will be involved in that episode as well. And I think, if I remember correctly, I've got Mike Nelson talked into it too. So that should be a fun episode. Now, that said, folks, if you have your own SysAdmin horror story you would like to share with the show and have us discuss it in an episode, again, hit our inbox, contact@sysadminweekly.com. Don't include any personal identifiable environment information in said email, but don't leave out the punchline either, right? So anyway, well, for our first recurring segment, now that my plugs are done and over with, we're going to start with I guess we'll start with Nerd Hour this week, Eric. Normally we do our News React segment, but let's start with Nerd Hour today. And Nerd Hour, of course, it doesn't take an hour, but this is the section of the show where my co-host and I, we discuss the geeky, nerdy things that we've been working on lately. Eric, I'm going to let you have the floor first, my friend.
Oh, well, my big geeky thing is actually not exactly for me. I've been, as you know, head down on, well, yeah, deeply involved in a very large writing project that hopefully we can release to the world very soon. And I have done almost nothing else for 2 weeks. So I'm getting really excited. I think we're close to the end, wrapping up. So yes, that's my nerd hour. But I'm not going to say anything else about it. I'm just going to.
Nothing else
Y'all
yet.
can wait.
Mystery project TBD. So you're taking a page out of my book. I've kind of mentioned that over the last couple of episodes myself. Hey, I've been working with the Ghost CMS and this mysterious project that I haven't named yet either. Well, it'll get named eventually. But yeah, that sounds good, Eric. We're looking forward to that. So while I have not had a ton of time lately for super geeky, nerdy stuff as of late, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the show before. I am a sucker for vinyl music, vinyl records. So I have actually been kind of digging into speaker systems and power amps and all that type of stuff, looking at a potential upgrade to, you know, the system, basically. And of course, if you're into vinyl and turntables and all that, you probably totally get it. It's a constant thing, but the setup never feels complete. But anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing the last couple of days, at least, since I recorded with Paul a few days ago. And I didn't want to repeat the same geeky, nerdy, techie stuff there. I think I don't remember what I just recorded with him a few days ago, and I've already forgotten what geeky, nerdy thing I mentioned during that show. I'll have to go back and listen to the episode, and I'll find out. But anyway. All right. Well, we have our News React segment is next up for our regular recurring segment. And I will selfishly start this one because it's interesting. So we know AI has kind of taken over the world in various ways, shapes, and forms, right? And if you frequent the tech news sites, you probably saw that Perplexity's Comet browser, I think, went GA. Either that or it's public preview, one of the two. I don't remember which. Anyway, there is already an attack happening targeting Perplexity's Comet browser, and it's aptly named Comet jacking. And basically, it turns a single click into data theft, essentially. And so the way that this attack plays out, when you get right down to it, it's a prompt injection attack. So the attacker crafts a malicious link with a prompt injection, whatever type of prompt injection they want to have play out within the Comet browser. The example given in the article that I'll put in the show notes basically uses Gmail as an example. So the attacker could tell Comet, which is an agentic AI browser, right? There's AI agents running there that can do things. The malicious link, the user navigates to it. The link basically tells the Comet browser, go out to the user's Gmail box and siphon data out to this endpoint over here, which is, an endpoint that the attacker controls. Now, that's a simplistic example I've just given you. Lots more details in the show notes, but, as those of us in the security industry have been saying for a while, the innovation at all costs thing that we've got going on with AI is going to continue to open Pandora's box of security incidents in the coming future. And I just think about the whole agentic AI thing, Eric, where I've got these autonomous agents doing complex things for me, accessing multiple data sources. It is just ripe for misuse and exploitation at multiple levels. So that's going to be a whole sub-industry of cybersecurity, in my opinion, to get our hands wrapped around that, right? As much as we can with things like agentic AI. So anyway, I'll put the link to that in the show notes, folks. You can check that out. Eric, what do you got for us?
I noticed an interview with Satya Nadella saying he's worried that Microsoft won't survive because they're not up to speed. They're not keeping up with the AI trends. And so much, my instant reaction to that was probably glad I was by myself. Like, you're looking for tips for Microsoft survival, one would be like listen to more of your customers than whichever tiny
Yes.
subset you're listening to.
Yes.
Start there. Uh, Maybe instead of firing people who want to be there and have a proven track record of doing a great job for Microsoft, keep them and get rid of all these people who quite clearly don't care. Couple of ideas there. I could probably come up with a few more if you let me, but I don't think AI is going to be what kills Microsoft.
No,
Just a thought.
no. It's interesting that that's the fear because I don't know, you look at anything Microsoft does in the last year or two, and it's AI, 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 AI. There's a copilot
Yes.
for this and a copilot for that. You get a copilot and you get a copilot, right? I mean, it's been all AI. And I mean,
To the point of excluding their core business of things that we purchase Microsoft product for. If I want an AI product, I can go to one of these other vendors.
exactly.
I
And
could do
so,
that. I don't necessarily need AI for every little thing. And we've already done a show on GitHub Copilot,
yep.
and I have used it extensively, and I love it. But that's not. I still have to do email. I still have to do writing, and I don't want AI boosting my writing. Because it doesn't sound like me anymore, and so on and so forth. So Microsoft has a lot of really good money-making opportunities and dropping everything for AI. Where are they seeing that that's a good return on investment?
Yeah, the thing that I always assumed that they would do, and they're kind of doing this, but they didn't focus on it nearly as much as I thought they would. And again, this is from my, my little seat inside of the IT world here is how I see it. I thought for sure that Copilot would just kind of remain like a gimmick, almost like just a chat bot, like, uh, chat.openai.com, GPT's web front end. Way back when I wouldn't have predicted that they'd put Copilot literally everywhere inside of every product. What I thought they were going to do and what I still think they should focus on instead of trying to have their own AI, they should become the data center. Azure should become the data center to run AI workloads in. Right? So if I'm a startup and I have an AI product, I need to run it somewhere. I don't want to buy a billion NVIDIA cards myself. Let me just rent out some data center usage, and Azure could be the place to do that, right? That's what I always thought they were going to do, but and
And
they are to a degree, but
hook
not.
things. Good
Yeah.
Lord, because it's fine to have like right now you can go into Visual Studio Code and pick the engine that it uses.
Hmm.
So why can't I do that in Word, Outlook, whatever else they want? Why do they have to have their own AI in there? Why
Yeah.
can't I pick the AI that I want in the Microsoft product? Microsoft can focus on making Microsoft products better.
Yeah.
Let other people do the AI thing, and you'll survive just fine. I mean, the world can't become pure AI. They're always
Yeah. I
all these
wonder.
other industries have to survive. So
For sure. For sure. And I wonder how much of this is tied to Bing search. So if read anything in the SEO world right now, traditional SEO is, depending on what side of the fence you're on, traditional SEO might be thrown out the window at this point, right?
yeah,
Because I know people that they haven't touched traditional Google search in months, right? So traditional search is kind of dying, right, in favor of AI enabled search results. And so I wonder if that's part of the push to have their own AI, right? So that they can continue to have meaningful traffic from Bing. I don't know that for sure because, of course, Google has the massive market share when it comes to search. And that's why
right.
Google's been pushing their own AI so hard because they don't want to lose their search business. But just conjecture my end. I wonder if that has any part of the puzzle there.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it feels like Nadella's playing and keeping up with the Joneses game and not trimming his own backyard. Like,
Yeah.
why does Microsoft need to beat? Why did they need to beat Google at search? Why was that even? I mean, I don't hate Bing the way a lot of other people like, oh, Bing is awful. Well, it does what I need it to do, but
Right. Right.
I don't care. And if Bing went away, I was fine. I'll just use Google or I'll use DuckDuckGo. This is not what I think of as a core Microsoft technology. And why are they chasing these other things so hard when Google Docs is a shadow of Microsoft Office?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's like Azure and M365. If you look at just those two service areas, they have seen consistent and explosive growth over the last decade, right? And that doesn't appear to be going anywhere. I mean, there's nothing on the planet today that can compete with M365 in terms of capabilities or scale.
Yeah.
So, I
And
mean,
even if AI takes over everything, we're still going to need email. We're still going to need
yeah,
docs. We're still going to need presentations. We're still going to have to get things done. Still have to do data entry.
yep,
It's AI is not going to. I mean, it's going to change everything, but we're not going to see entire industries fall.
right.
So it's just weird why they would pivot away from the things they're good at and make themselves worse at those to try to jump into a pond where they're already not one of the bigger fish.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that.
Well, I guess time will tell, right? We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But uh, anyway. Well, that is our news react segment of the show. And I'll get that link from you, Eric, so I can put that in the show notes, folks, so you can take a look at that as well, too. I think it was a news article, wasn't it, Eric? Or was it an interview? Yeah, interview, I think you said.
Well, I saw it in an article. The
Gotcha. Okay.
quote
Got
from
it.
him. I'm guessing it was an interview. I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay. Either way, I'll get the URL put in the show notes, folks, so you can check that out. So, I guess it's time to get to our main topic today, and we are talking about mental health in technology, right? And technology, I should have went out and looked before we hit record in this episode, Eric. I wonder how large the technology sector is in comparison to every other sector in the world, right? In terms of number of workers. I have to imagine it's pretty high in the list, but I don't know for sure. And reason I bring that up is because, if you do any searching or reading on this particular topic, it becomes clear very quickly that we have a mental health crisis in the tech space. So I actually have some statistics here to share that I thought were interesting. So this first study was basically a survey that was done by Slack back in 2020. So keep that in mind. This is back done in 2020. So of course we had COVID kind of playing a role in some of this, I'm sure. That said, there were some big findings in the study regardless. So 51% of people in the tech space had been diagnosed with a mental health condition, right? 57% reported burnout. No surprise there. 71% said their productivity was reduced by a mental health issue. So that's just one study. Let's look at another one here. I've got one by Tech UK. So they surveyed. So in 2022, the Burnout Index surveyed 32,500 tech professionals across 33 countries. They found 62% of tech professionals feel physically and emotionally drained due to the demands of their job. 69% of women and 56% of men feel run down and drained of physical and emotional energy after a workday. 2 in 5 workers surveyed show a high risk of burnout, with 42% of those considering quitting their role in the next 6 months. And in comparison to other industries, tech workers are more susceptible to imposter syndrome due to the rapidly evolving nature of the industry. And that's just 2 studies. I've seen many, many more than that, right? And so, it's pretty clear there's an issue here, whether the industry wants to admit that or not. And, I can speak personally, and Eric, I know you can too, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on in this episode. But I've seen it myself as well too. I've seen techs burn out. I have seen people quit the industry because they can't deal with it anymore. I have seen, families impacted because of the stressors of the job, not personally, but coworkers and things like that, right? So, Eric, I'm sure you've seen similar things, I'm guessing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's
Absolutely. Worked, yeah, one of my first true real tech jobs was in a help support call center. Those are soul
brutal,
sucking.
brutal. Yep, absolutely brutal. I I don't remember who I was talking to. It's a family friend I don't remember who I was talking to. Basically, got on the subject of help desk, L1 help desk, that type of work, right? And how a lot of people treat L1 help desk folks just like they treat them like garbage. They
Yeah.
just do not treat them well. The L1 tech will be asking a perfectly legit question, like, hey, did you do this thing, or is this running? And they'll get a response from the user, oh, that's a stupid question, or something like that. I could come up with all kinds of examples, right? But it is not only a difficult job and a mentally draining job, it is a thankless job as well. And so yeah, the L1 help desk role, I I would argue, and I'll fight people on this. I would argue it is one of the most difficult jobs in the tech space. Period. Full stop.
Yep. But somehow it became this entry level getting your foot in the door job.
Yep. I've
No,
never understood that.
no, you give me somebody with 20 something years of help desk experience because it's what they're calling and pay them accordingly. And you know what? Yeah, people might be a little happier. Surprise.
Yeah.
Everybody would be happier. So yeah, I hate it. It's an entry level and also considered like a treadmill job. There's no promotions. There's no, like you come in, you do it until you're tired and you stop. It's basically, when I say a treadmill job, that's what I mean.
Right.
You don't progress, you don't change, nothing changes. You just do the same thing until you don't want to do it anymore and then you get off. Somebody else
Yeah.
takes on. So
Depending on the org, I have seen where there could be advancements up to L2, L3 help desk, right? Where the issues that end up on your desk are more complex or require more niche knowledge, right? But
mhm,
still, it's end user support at the end of the day in some way, shape, or form.
right.
So
And I feel like that whole organization makes no sense because one thing you didn't touch on, which I think is really interesting, as far as I'm concerned, L1 Help Desk also has to be a therapist. We
oh
did
oh yeah.
so much of it's okay, you're going to be fine, you're not an idiot, you're just a normal person trying to deal with a complex issue. Things that we had to learn these things on our own, right? We didn't go to school for that, you know.
Yep.
It's not like we're trained, but you become a psychotherapist, and L2 and L3 usually have already gotten the people by that point they're just so livid they just can't be reasoned with. So you get that, or you get the ones that the L1 talked them off the shelf, but are off the ledge, but they don't know how to fix the problem. So now, like, okay, well, I have a complex technical problem, but the human problem has kind of been smoothed over, sort of a thing. So
Yeah.
you like a lot of times with like the L2 and the L3, like, mentally, L1 is much harder. I feel.
Yeah. Now, all my help desk and call center experience stems from the MSP space. And there's one thing I want to point out here that I feel like makes the help desk space even more difficult for some organizations. If you have an organization like an MSP, you're providing tech services for a number of customers. Not only do you have to be able to fix the issue and, like you said, kind of be a therapist to that end user a little bit, saying it's going to be okay, you might have politics in play too if you're a services organization, right? Oh, it's caller X, company X calling. Take care of them. Do a really good job. Don't piss them off because we'll lose their business, right? There's like that whole added layer of pressure in that situation just because of the nature of the services business on top of tech, right? So
Oh,
there's
well, let's go further. Let's go another step out. So when I was doing it, we were actually under an NDA. I'm not supposed to talk about who we were working for because we worked for big name industries, but my employer, I should say, worked for the big name industry,
right.
big names in the industry. And so the one that I work for, I think they're gone now. So I'm just going to say it out loud. I did tech support for AST computers. And when you called in, you thought you were talking to an employee of AST, but you weren't.
Oh,
We were
yes.
contracted out, and so we had pressure, of course, to help the customer. And I got some real doozies on, like, I know what needs to be done, but I don't have the power to do it. And now I'm sitting here like, I feel really terrible for you, but I know exactly what I have to do is basically what I need to do, like send you this new part or something, but I can't do that. And then they're like, oh my God, and like the customers, man, they're right. And I'm in the middle, but also I got a supervisor breathing over my shoulder going, you have resolution time targets. You need to get this done in 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. And if you can't do that, we miss our targets and then we don't get paid. And
We're going to swing back to I've got more on the time thing a little bit later in the outline. But yes, that whole time pressure thing comes up again and again when we talk about the mental health aspect of tech. So sorry, continue.
that's basically what I wanted to talk
Oh,
about is that extra layer that you're getting pressure from the customer who they want their problem to go away. And then sometimes there's other places like, well, but you also have to do it fast.
right.
And so, like, what I ran into a lot was guys who would just throw out some cockamamie answer to some user who didn't know any better. Like, oh, I'm running out of space on my hard drive. Oh, okay, defrag it. Bye. And then, like, 20 minutes later, call back in. Well, I defragged it, but I still don't have any space. And now they're mad because the last guy
Right.
lied to him. But he got his resolution target time of 3 minutes. And now I'm going to spend 20 minutes. Like, all right, let's figure out how to delete files. So it would come in like because I believed in doing a good job, I would have much worse resolution time statistics than the guy sitting next to me, and that's what we would be graded on. So he would get the kudos, and I would get the lectures. Okay,
I'll
well,
have
I'm
to,
not gonna change who I am because guess what? We both still get paid the same, so fine.
I'll have to channel my inner Yoda here, but fast resolution times not make one great.
No,
Huh.
well, clicking the resolved box doesn't make you great. Actual resolution in a short time, yes, that does make you great. But
Fair point. Fair point. That's very true. So, the thing that surprises me when we talk about the burden of poor mental health on tech teams, especially, I feel like business leaders in general, I'm speaking in generalities. I've known some business leaders that take it very seriously and do an amazing job at helping manage it. I've also seen some business leaders that couldn't care less, right? They'll run tech teams into the ground,
yes, they
you
will.
know, and keep running them into the
Yep.
ground for an extended period of time. And it still surprises me to this day that I feel like your average business leader, they don't stop to think about how poor mental health degrades the capabilities of your tech team, whether that's a help desk or a service desk supporting external customers, your SysAdmin, your network techs, your phone support team, like whatever. It doesn't matter the team. Poor mental health will break down resolution or performance somewhere along the way. It's gonna happen, and I've seen it happen in a number of cases, right?
Yes.
So I remember a specific situation where we were doing I guess you would call it a data center move because it was basically a data center for a customer we were servicing at the time. We were basically moving a whole rack, right? From one geographic location to another, I don't know, 70 miles apart or something like that. So we're physically moving equipment, a whole rack. And now, when I start disassembling a rack, the first thing I do is I label the hell out of cables. This cable's plugged into this port on this switch, which is plugged into this port on this server, documented on notepads and whatnot. That said, in this particular case, I don't remember what the circumstances were, but there was an external company actually moving the gear this time. Do you think they labeled anything? I show up at the data center. There's literally a pile of cables in the middle of the room. A pile of
No, they didn't
cables.
even.
Nothing was labeled. And I should also point out that this was an environment where I want to say there were about 16 VLANs in play, if I remember correctly. It was double-digit VLANs. And so now, you've got specific ports on specific switches that can only talk to specific ports on other specific switches. And you see where I'm going with this. So what turned into, a work-day project has now become oh my God, fix it now, get it up and running as soon as possible, all night, Herculean task. That said, we had multiple people involved in this that had to call it quits around 1, 2 in the morning because 1, you're physically fatigued. 2, you've got stuff at home you might need to be taken care of, not to mention just the stress of this poor planning, right? And this is cases where we got it done, but I mean, you had half of a team that, how do I want to put it? Half a team that rightly so needed to call in some days for like the week afterwards because it was that intense, right? And in the meantime, everybody else in the office has to pick up the slack. It has this domino effect on the entire support chain, right? All because somebody didn't label their cables and didn't have proper documentation, which, see our documentation episode Eric and I recorded a couple episodes ago. So there's that too. Anyway, that's the one, real world case I can think of. I don't know if you have any you want to share before we move on to the next item here.
So you mean times that my brain was destroyed by somebody else's port? No, we probably shouldn't do that or we'll never get through this episode.
8 hours later, maybe we'll be through it all.
No.
That sounds like a 24-hour SysAdmin Weekly live stream. There we go. We'll do that one for charity or something. Yeah.
The marathon round of, and this one time.
It might take that long too. Anyway,
when I look back on some of those years and like, why did I put up? It got me here, so I'm gonna say, all right, fine. But man, that was a hard road.
Yep, for sure. So we've kind of talked about how there's a crisis in tech regarding mental health, right? We shared some statistics, talked about how it can impact the performance of, tech teams. We've kind of started delving into the personal experience aspect of it here, and that's kind of what I wanted to spend the next section here talking about. And I think we've mentioned it on the show before. If you've been a long time viewer of the show, Eric and I have both had our struggles with mental health in tech. And Eric, I don't want to speak for you. I'll let you do that. But, personally myself, I am diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And anybody who hears that term, they think generalized just mean like, oh, you're just generally anxious, and they don't understand what the term means. Generalized anxiety disorder is you on the regular are dealing with a high baseline level of anxiety, right? You think about what your average, uncomfortable anxiety feeling is. Most people don't have it unless something is going on, right? Mine is generally on a scale of 1 to 10. My anxiety level rarely gets under like a 3, right? Out of 10. There's always like this little simmering, right? And so that's kind of how I always explain generalized anxiety disorder. But I've had some struggles over the years in tech because of that. And, we'll get into that. But Eric, I want to give you a chance to tell your piece here before we move on.
So my diagnosis, I have many because, I have to be extra as part of my story.
Overachiever.
Wow, bless you. That was a nice way to say it. It's not really that many. I'm going to be careful there. I also have generalized anxiety disorder, and I will accept your definition of it. That's fine. I also have ADHD, and that is a relatively recent diagnosis. So that actually gives me a lot of fuel to work specifically for this episode. So there are a few things I wanted to be sure I said before we left, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and just say them now. So one thing is I am older than you, Andy. Hopefully older than a lot of our listeners too, mainly because, I don't not really sure why I said hopefully, doesn't matter. But there is a lot about mental health that is socially sort of held down. So, like, if you know people from the silent generation, they don't talk about mental disorders unless
Nope.
they are so extreme that you just can't avoid them, like schizophrenia, something like that. Um, they generally refuse to acknowledge their existence. They certainly aren't going to seek help for them. Um, your baby boomer generation is a little better about it, but they
Not
can also
much.
be more dismissive. Yes.
Yeah.
So the silent generation will kind of be like, well, that's fine for you kids, but not me. I'm not going to, where the boomers would be like, well, you made it up. Or like my favorite thing that goes around, it's all in your head is like, yes, that's where I keep my brains.
Or my favorite, you have too much time to think.
Really? Yeah, I hadn't that one hasn't hit me yet, so okay. Um, but so I'm Gen X, and then I don't know how many, millennials, whatever. So we've seen kind of a swing. Everything kind of operates on a pendulum, in my opinion. So like the silent generation, like we're not going to talk about it, and the boomers like we're going to talk about it, but we're gonna make it a thing to mock. And Gen X kind of does a little bit of I have it, but I don't care because we are super nihilistic. I grew up, well, the Russians are gonna nuke us any day, so let's just have a Pop-Tart and not worry about life because nothing matters because 'cause we're all gonna get nuked. Then, I know a lot of millennials, they have their own millennial thing, and then but the Gen Z and Alpha, they are kinda like, "Yeah, we're gonna embrace mental health and we're gonna take it seriously," but their pendulum has swung so far this way that they do a lot of what I would consider like TikTok diagnosis is like, "Oh, I have that, and I have that, and I have that," and they just pick things that so don't, for one thing, don't do that.
Right.
And we're probably going to need to come back to what you should do instead. But that has also led to the other pendulum of people going, well, everybody's got something these days, so they just don't want to deal with it. Well, okay, yeah, I'm exhausted by the TikTok diagnoses as anyone else can be, but it
Yep.
doesn't make these things not real. It doesn't make them go away. So there's always that kind of trying to find that center line, and then you run into the other category of people. This one right here, I was diagnosed with ADHD very late in life, and so for a while, that really like, oh, the nice thing is like, oh, now I understand. As they're explaining to me, like a lot of people even tell you ADHD isn't real. Um, it is the single most studied mental health condition in history. Nobody
Right.
else is close. ADHD is your mental health professionals know more about ADHD than pretty much any other mental health condition there is. However, in pop psychology and pop culture, whatever, it's also one of the most poorly represented, understood. Most of the stuff you read,
Yep.
like, or something like I call them info memes. I don't know, but where they'll have this big text and some AI generated picture and they'll say something, "Oh, people with ADHD, this and that." Half of that is garbage. Don't listen to it. Um, whatever you hear from people who aren't professionals and, even a lot of people diagnosed with ADHD are like, go with the pros.
Yep.
And the same for all the other conditions too. I just, um, like I said, I'm trying to bring that center back in. Uh, it's nice to finally get an explanation for what's going on, but then all of a sudden we become our diagnoses and it's hard, at least for a while, to stop looking at everything we do through the lens of ADHD or general anxiety disorder, whatever's going on, which restricts you for one thing, and for another thing, other people get kind of sick of it. Sorry, I have to apologize to a lot of people all the time. Like, I don't want to talk about this too much, but we have been what they call masking for our entire lives, where you see what society expects you to do, and then you do that thing to the best of your ability, and whatever your diagnosis is, make not the diagnosis, the actual condition makes doing what society expects of you harder than it is for people who don't have that condition.
Right. Yeah.
So when you can come out and go, you know what? The reason I can't do that thing that you think is so simple is because I have a condition that makes it infinitely harder for me to do, sometimes to the point to where I can't do it at all. And that becomes like a shield at times too. And we got to be careful. Like if you were able to mask like me, I was able to mask into my 40s pretty well. I mean, people will go, yeah, there's something off, something weird about him, whatever. But if you're able to pull it off, that means you can do it. And it is harder for you, but don't become your diagnosis.
Right.
Like acknowledge it, treat it, do the thing, but don't let it control you. And, don't let it be who you are because it isn't.
Right.
And all of our conditions, and it's going to be interesting. I want to hear your stories, Andy, about your general anxiety disorder and compare it to mine, because the first thing is in the course of masking, we all come up with our own ways of coping and dealing and translating and everything else. And so therefore all of our things appear differently, which is also why these TikTok diagnoses are so bad. Because, if you look at it, I have that and have that and have that. Well, no, not necessarily. See a professional. All right.
Yep.
I'm going to hand the conch shell back to you, sir. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. All good stuff, Eric. I want to do one follow-up question really quick with you. When you look at your tech career, right? Your career in technology, I I have to believe it's been difficult to do some things in tech while having to deal with like ADHD, for example, right? Is
Yeah.
there I don't know if you have any examples of that you can share or want to share, right?
Well, not so much examples. I want to categorize something that wow, it was nice to finally for me to accept it and then figure out what to do and then to help like my supervisor and whatever else. Like these are things you can expect me to do well, and these are things you can expect me to do poorly. And also I've identified other people on the team who can do those things better than me. So I am really bad at, assembly line type things. If I need to click the same checkbox 38 times in a row, I'll probably screw it up on the third time. I do not do repetitive tasks well. And we can, and I would, I think we're probably going to swing back to this, like an explanation of ADHD and why that happens. But there are people, for instance, on my team who are very good at rote chores, and so they get them, and I don't.
Right.
Where I shine is I see like I have because the ideas don't stop flowing for me, and I don't do a great job saying this idea is better than that one necessarily. They're all just kind of there. And so what'll happen sometimes is I will find novel solutions to things that nobody else saw because my brain makes bizarre connections to other people like, well, it is wild up in here all the time, right? But I have learned how to use that to my benefit in a way that
Right.
some other people don't. So when you need somebody who can sit down and run the same task multiple times in a row, I'm not your guy. If you need somebody who you just kind of throw him in and go, "What do we do?" And you come up with, there are no bad ideas. Like, well, I've got a dozen. We'll find out if I may test you on you're. Are there really no bad ideas? Maybe I have a few, but
Right. Right.
sometimes you come in, well, wow, why were you sitting on that one? Like, I didn't realize I was sitting on it.
Right. Right. Well, that's good feedback there. So I can dive into my own backstory here a little bit. I don't even remember when I was diagnosed. Now I have 5 years ago, six, something like that. And it's funny you mentioned the masking thing, Eric, because I I feel like I was really good at masking until all of a sudden I wasn't. Right.
Yep,
And
that's normal.
so the main way that I masked, having an anxiety disorder was I would throw myself into technology, into blogging, into learning Hyper-V, into basically I became a master of mental distraction, right? And that only works for so long. And eventually that dam breaks and you can't do that anymore. And so ultimately when I got diagnosed, it was uh, there was a number of things that led up to it, but I think one of the really big things that contributed to it was I had interviewed with basically for my dream job at one point in time, years and years ago, my dream job at that time. And it went great. It was one of those interviews where you just knocked every question out of the park. You had good rapport with the interviewer, and one of those like, yeah, this worked out really well. Expect a callback and a kind of the implied offer discussion at the end of the interview. Fast forward 3 weeks, hadn't heard anything, nothing. So I sent a follow-up email and I just get the blank corporate, we have decided to, move on with other candidates. Didn't even get an explanation as to why.
Yeah, what did I do wrong?
And so at that particular point, like, I've always dealt with imposter syndrome, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more. But at that stage, my imposter syndrome and anxiety disorder just went into overdrive, and there was no amount of distraction that would mask it at that stage, right? Which is when I, ultimately went to a therapist, got diagnosed, and started dealing with it, right? And now years later, I'm much better at dealing with it usually, but it's still there, just like any mental health disorder. And I guess from a day-to-day perspective, when we talk about this in terms of tech work and the tech sector, the way that it kind of presents for me, that nervousness, that anxiety, it's a feeling, right? And when you think about, think for yourself about when you try to do a task while you're nervous or distracted by something, it's more difficult to do that task, right? And because you've got that, that preoccupation with, oh, I'm nervous, or something is distracting me, right? Because of whatever you're nervous about, right? And to me, it's just, it almost presents as emotional noise, if that makes sense. So I always have like this low grade wall of emotional noise to work through with completing any task, right? And so ultimately, I learned the skills to deal with that, right? And that's the other important thing that I always try to communicate when I'm talking about the subject with tech professionals and people that are dealing with mental health issues is, especially in tech, we sit down and we go get certified in SQL, or we start learning about Red Hat Linux to get Rails certified, right? RHCE, whatever the certification is. We learn these skills. You got to look at mental health as a skill as well, right? And unfortunately, we all don't start in the same place. Some of us have more weight to carry in that area than others. And so it's just a skill that you have to learn, just like anything else. And, that's kind of the way I approached it. And I think the hardest thing for me was, I don't know, I've always been like this with pretty much any skills. Like, if I don't pick it up really fast, I start getting on myself like, dude, come on, like, you should be better than this. Do better, like I'll start beating myself up type of thing. And I was like that for like the first year of learning how to deal with generalized anxiety disorder, right? And just over analyzing again and again. Well, okay, I was nervous because of A and I did B, C, and D, but that didn't work out. So I tried, I just making it worse for myself in the end, right? So, but yeah, I kind of looking back at my career and where it has manifested itself, my real heavy SysAdmin days were back before I was diagnosed, but I can look back on those days with through that lens of now understanding this about myself. And I can think of multiple on-call situations where this came up. The one that always comes to mind is I got a phone call at 3 a.m. one night from our help desk saying, hey, this entire cluster is offline. Okay, all right, well, we have I don't know what it was, a 2-hour SLA for this particular customer. Let's log in and see what's going on. Oh, I can't, I can see the host, but the host can't talk to anything except management. These were ESXi hosts, right? Come to find out, somebody had made a scheduled change to the networking fabric that the VMs used for connectivity, not knowing that this network fabric was set up as an ether channel. So you make one change to one of the NICs the way that this ether channel was configured, and poof goes the entire connection, even though there were 4 NICs and 4 switch ports involved. You change one of them, boom, goes the whole ether channel. And to make things even better, I couldn't reach the management interface of the switch. And this data center is 80 miles an hour from where I'm taking 80 miles from where I'm taking the call.
Oh,
So by the time I figure all this out, it's, about 4:45, right? 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm looking at the clock. Okay, people are going to start coming in and trying to work at this business in about an hour and a half. So that clock is ticking, right? And so there were many times throughout, my early SysAdmin days where there was this time crunch, right? There was this, oh my God, fix it right now type of mentality. We're under SLA, or, customers down or whatever. I look back on those situations and they were way, way more difficult for me mentally than they really needed to be, just because I was dealing with a then undiagnosed, anxiety disorder. And so that's, if I gave any advice to somebody struggling with that today, or entering the industry with an anxiety disorder or ADHD or whatever, when you come up against that time crunch, because you will, it's going to happen at some point, ignore the time crunch. Yes, be cognizant that you need to get it up and running when you can. But if you need to step away for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just to get your head screwed on straight so you can make informed, rational decisions, do it. Right?
mm,
Even if that manager is, breathing down your neck, it'll get fixed when it gets fixed. Right? And with the
yes.
few rare environments, you can't say this about every environment, but 98% of them you can. If it's not up for an extra 10 minutes, nobody's going to die, right? So, like I said, you could say that about the vast majority of environments. So, but that was one of the biggest realizations for me is dealing with that time crunch when there's this inertia, this push to have resolution right now, go, go, go. That was always a massive trigger for my anxiety working in the trenches, right? So anyway,
Great
I
piece
think,
of advice there. Mine was always similar. I mean, it's basically addressing the same problem. So clearly, this is a thing throughout the whole industry.
yeah,
My thing to people is, you work in IT, something is always on fire.
sure is.
So if you can't deal with things being on fire, not a great position for you to be in. It's really not. So what I would say to do is don't sit so much and be like, oh my, it's on fire. Yeah, this is my job, is to deal with fires.
Yep,
So yes, Mr. Manager, you can yell at me and I can make you feel better, or you can go away and let me fix it. What would you prefer? I get paid the same either way.
yep.
And you know,
And
I'm not saying it's easy. What I'm saying is humans are super adaptable, which ties into the whole thing, like the reasons that everything manifests differently, and like why I say you shouldn't become your diagnosis. Humans adapt. So there's a fake it till you make it thing that I'm just going to be like, yeah, I know it's on fire and I'm doing my best. So go away, let me do this.
yep,
Even if inside you're churning, keep saying, just do it, do it, do it, do it. And eventually you'll be like, yeah, I put out lots of fires and I don't do it while I'm responding to people asking me when it's going to come back. So we can't do this. Go away. Let me
yep.
fix it. Right. So all of that. And so I really wanted to clue in on that piece of advice that you're giving people, that, yeah, It is on fire. And if part of your resolution is I need to take a minute to clear my head, that's part of the resolution,
Do
and
it.
do it.
Yep. Because the other thing you have to think about is, okay, let's say you ignore that, that thought of like, hey, I need a minute. If you ignore that and you press on, that's when mistakes happen, right? That's when your tiny fire turns into a massive fire if you make the wrong mistake, right? The one news item from a year or two ago that still sticks with me. It was AWS. There was a AWS outage. Remember the AWS outage that was on the U.S. Eastern Seaboard?
Yep.
That came down to a, if I remember correctly, a backslash was used in a command instead of a forward slash. Can you imagine being the person that took AWS down on the Eastern Seaboard? Right? Now, I'm not saying that this person made a mistake because they were anxious or distracted or whatever. I'm just using it as an example of what could happen, right? Maybe you're working on a situation where just a single rack at a data center is down, but you make the wrong change and all of a sudden the whole data center is unavailable, right? I mean, I'm speaking in extremes here, but you get the idea. So,
And it happens to all of us.
yep.
I'm really lucky that I've never done a mistake that was so bad that it was like hours of outages or anything crazy, but I've made mistakes and, I've
Yep.
been yelled at.
Yep. We've all been there.
I'm still here. I'm still here and doing okay. And
Yep.
you can too.
Yep. For sure. So I kind of wanted to pivot into things that help, right? And the first thing I'm going to say, right, is go find a therapist. If you suspect you're dealing with mental health or, just it's not going well, go talk to a therapist. That's one of the best things I ever did. I fought it for a while, and I was so happy after I finally did. So that's the first thing. But, when we talk about dealing with anxiety, there's two things that I have used in situations where, I can't walk away for a few minutes or whatever. These are two things that I do from time to time that really help. So there's a 5 senses exercise you can do where, okay, what are 5 things in the room I can see? Okay, well, what are 4 things that I can touch? 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, 1 thing I can taste, right? That type of thing. And really, it's intended to ground you and stop your brain from churning about whatever's going on and be more focused on the here and now. That works really well for me most of the time. The other thing is box breathing is what you'll often hear it called. I've heard it called other things, but I've used that quite frequently, and that is you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. Repeat as needed, basically, right? Focus on the breathing. And it actually works. First time I saw it, I'm like, that's weird. That'll never work, right? Well, it does. It does. And yeah, those are the ones that help me in the moment. They don't always work, but a lot of times they do. And for those situations where, again, I can speak to the anxiety specifically. This is not necessarily for ADHD, but if you're in a situation where like the anxiety is just super over the top, then yeah, definitely step away from a bit. Have some sort of routine that you go through when you're dealing with that high degree of anxiety, something that you do the same every time that helps you kind of calm down. That way you can logically come back to whatever it is you were trying to work on, right? So I don't know if there's any tips you wanted to share on the ADHD side, Eric.
Well, let's hit a bunch of them actually. So, and I'm also going to circle back on the anxiety thing. One thing you said that I'm going to push to everybody. I'm such a big believer in therapy. Go anyway. You're like, does none of this applies. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that's true.
Go to a therapist. Not everybody gets a diagnosis, and that's fine. You don't necessarily need a diagnosis, but it doesn't mean therapy doesn't benefit you because, hey, your life can suck. Even if you have all perfect, normal chemical balances, your life can still be terrible. And it's okay to go see a therapist.
Yep.
One thing that I think really kind of hurts us is if you know absolutely nothing about a subject, it's very hard to select professionals in the medical field, especially. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you can just tell somebody doesn't really know what they're talking about.
Right.
Profession is a lot harder, especially with the amount of garbage, fake medical advice and mental health advice we get on social media. So
Yep.
I want to bring back a time proven thing that we have done for other diseases that nobody argues about, like cancer. We call it the second opinion.
Yep.
If you go to a therapist and they don't jive with you, something doesn't feel right, go to another one. Go to another one. It's okay to therapy shop. It's not
Yep.
okay to land on a therapist who tells you what you want to hear. That's not okay. You
Yep.
got to find one who, in my opinion, a good therapist doesn't give advice. They help you work through stuff.
Yep.
Right? They're not, and again, they're not, a therapist shouldn't be looking for a diagnosis. They kind of have to in the United States. They got to put something on your insurance paperwork, but so they got to have a code, but they have way, they'll deal with that, right? They know what they're doing. So don't worry about that. They're really supposed to be trying to help you go through your life without feeling excessive emotions of, whatever. Um, Also kind of tied this into, sorry, our social environment where, like, see, my anxiety came out way differently than yours. I never, almost never felt anything that I would have categorized as being anxious
Mm.
ever, almost never. Um, because on, I'm not sure that I can say because I can tell you conditions that maybe contributed. And one thing, like in our society, is that men are allowed to be happy, stoic, and angry. They're not really allowed to have any other emotion than those 3. So, but that doesn't stop emotions from happening. What happened when we mask, then some of us will then just convert whatever we're having into one of those 3 columns.
Right.
So what I would do is, like, I would have emotions, I didn't know what they were, I didn't know how to deal with them, so I would push them down, okay? Set on them, set on them, set on them, and then there would be too much of a buildup. Like you were saying, that scale from 1 to 10.
Yep.
I would hit a point where my anxiety, and I didn't know what that's what it was, but it was running at a 7. And something would happen, and not even necessarily a big thing, and then I would just have these explosive outbursts where all of it would
Oh
come out
yeah.
in just one big thing.
Yep.
And so it expressed itself as very extreme anger, and I was fortunate, as were the people around me, that I didn't express it violently. Like, I even had, one of my therapists I really loved and really, really trusted, she said, "Maybe you should get a punching bag or something." I'm like, "But you don't understand, I'm not a violent person. And I don't wanna encourage any kind of violent behavior, even if it's against an inanimate object. I just don't wanna do that because so far, all of my outbursts they're loud, and I'm a big man, and I don't hear well, so I have my voice gets louder and louder and louder, and so when I get amped up, man, I can be scary, right? And, like, what if I was violent on top of that? Like, I don't want that, especially because for me, at least, it was so my outbursts would be really irrational, like, it wouldn't even make sense. Like, if you somebody finally recorded one and played it back, and like, I don't know who that is, right?
Yeah.
And so getting back to, like, we're going to tie a whole lot of things back in here is that I needed a professional to sort that out and tell me that's generalized anxiety disorder. There's no TikTok meme that's going to sort that out for me.
No.
How do you tie that into, but then, okay, all right, but there were signs of it too. So I need to hang on to that for just a second because I want to tie it back to something else you said, but I needed the professional to figure that out, okay, and tell me, "Here's what's going on." Then the professional gave me the tools. Then, and this is what's super important, is a professional said, "We're making headway and you're getting better. I want you to see a psychiatrist." Okay? So, uh, TV screws these up all the time, and, like, if you work in IT, you know how badly they get a tech guy on TV and, like, that's not, and it's the same for every other profession, including,
Sure is.
anything to do with mental health. Your therapist, your talk therapist, your psychotherapist, they're going to talk to you and they're going to try to help you work within, your own stuff. A psychiatrist is like listening for you to say a certain thing so they can figure out which drug to throw at you. They're not really there for talk therapy. Some of them add that, but that's not really what psychiatry is. Psychiatry says your brain, like the rest of your body, is a great big mass of chemicals, and sometimes those chemicals are a little wavy, and then we give you this pill, and now your chemicals are back. So my therapist sent me a psychiatrist, put me on drugs for generalized anxiety disorder, and between the therapy and the pills, and of course the work I was doing on myself, that's how I address my anxiety disorder. And I just, I mean, there are so many things there to unpack, but basically, like what we're at is like, how do we get help on this? Well, you see somebody,
Yeah.
you see a professional, you see multiple professionals if you need to, you try to get it, a grounding of it. And it, honestly, a big part of it is that taking care of it, do your part too. Like you can't just, well, I went to my therapist, now everything's better. Like not really their job.
You gotta work
Not
on
how
it
that
too.
works. Yeah, they're not setting a bone. They're this is because like you have anxiety disorder, I have anxiety disorder. Yours was one, mine was another. So
Yep.
that is how we adapted to our problems. And um it just I keep wanting to say something and then it runs away from me before I can get back to it, and I apologize for that. Which is that's part of the ADHD part. Kind of what where I really want to deal with it is I really want folks to understand the chemical thing. So like for anxiety, when it's chemical, this is also true for depression. So your brain has neuroreceptors, and basically whenever they show diagrams of the brain and how it's working, they always show like, oh, these electrical impulses flashing everywhere, and cool, that's great. What's really going on is not, it's kind of that, but actually, so you've got two little neurons, and this neuron wants to send a message to this one. Okay. So it shoots a chemical over, and then it takes the chemical back because it don't want to get rid of it. It needs to keep it, right? It needs to hang on to it. Right. So one of those chemicals is serotonin. Okay. And so for people who have generalized anxiety disorder and depression, what's happening is it does this. It sucks that serotonin back too fast. So then we take drugs called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which slow down that taking back of it like normal people. ADHD is related, except it's dopamine instead of serotonin.
Mm. Yep.
And you got to understand, I am not a health professional. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not trained on this. These are like super quick explanations that I can say in a couple sentences. There's a whole lot more to it than that, but that's the basic idea. So for you and I, what's going on chemically, assuming yours is at a level where it needs to be medicated, mine is, maybe yours isn't.
Same.
That's
Mine
what's
is too.
going on. So I have to take that chemical then to keep that right. And over time, your brain function can change, and those chemicals can. So, my prescription has gone down through the years, right? As I get it, you actually can change the wiring in your brain through practice and taking your drugs on time. Um, with ADHD, that usually is a lifetime thing, but like what happens for me, I'm going to say like to stay on topic of what helps is part of it is understanding it and talking to your professional about I have this condition. What do I do? Right? Besides just taking a pill, what do I do? And so like one thing is understanding like one of the things that happens for normal people, it's like you get a to-do list and then you check an item off of it and you get a dopamine hit. And then another thing, you get a dopamine hit. Your brain figures out like, oh, in order to make my life the most efficient, you get a bigger dopamine hit for this, you get a smaller one for that. And then you will prioritize your list unconsciously based on how much dopamine you're going to get out of finishing it. Where with me, I'm probably not going to get a dopamine hit at all. And if I do, it's going to be minor and they're all going to be the same. So when somebody else looks at their to do list, they prioritize it. My brain is like, they're all equal. And I don't want to do any of them. And there's not going to be a reward for it. So I'm just not going to.
Right.
Right. And so then, but then the other parts of my brain are like, but you have to. So then I go into it and I do it and it sucks and I hate it, but I get it done. Right. And then I'm exhausted.
Right.
And I'm exhausted because I had to put in the extra effort to do something that somebody else would have gotten a natural dopamine hit from.
Right.
And so this is the part where I talk about adaptation and making sure other people understand what's going on. Like, it's not that I can't do the things that other people do. It's just that it takes a lot more effort and it wears me down.
Yeah.
this is a lot of mental effort, and that burns calories just like going out and running around. Unfortunately, it doesn't take it off my waistline like going out and running around does, but it takes energy, it takes
It
effort,
does.
and
Does.
knowing all of those things that I just said help me. And that's a huge part of it. So when you go in and you're talking about methods that help, it's like understanding what's going on through the professionals explaining it to you and finding the books and finding the materials
For sure.
and doing the work on yourself. That's what helps more than anything. And also saying, you know what, I can be better. I may not be able to be like 100% turning into the guy sitting next to me, which is fine. I don't need to be like him. He doesn't need to be like me. We can all be different. That's fine.
Mhm.
But also understanding the way my brain chemistry works versus his to enough of a degree that, planning around it, plotting around it, or whatever. And like in my life, I find people who are good at planning and prioritizing because I know those are not skills that I have. What I do have a good skill of is somebody going in, I need you to do this like right now because the building's going to burn down if you don't. Okay, that I get. Not dying. Hope dopamine hit is very high. I'm not dying. So
Right. That's I think the core recommendation there is go see a therapist, you know?
yeah,
I mean, like,
I'm going to give you one piece of advice that I stumbled into by accident. If your brain works the way I did, therapists work just like we do in IT. Therapists have modalities is the word that they use, different ways that they practice their craft. And I am a huge fan of internal family systems. It's IFS. There's a book out there written by the guy who came up, whatever, designed it, called You Are the Person That You've Been Waiting For, or You Are the One You've Been Waiting For, something like that. I can't remember. It's a good read. The guy is a little full of himself, and you kind of have to deal with that. But fine, whatever. This one, this modality, it does two things I really like. First of all, it requires the therapist to investigate themselves on a regular basis and not just like throw things at you. They also have to consider themselves. And it also explains to me the way your brain organizes things in a way that makes sense. There are other good modalities that work just fine. There's the cognitive behavioral therapy, which a lot of therapists do. That's a big one.
that's the one that works for
Um,
me very well.
so don't be afraid to kind of ask around and like, hey, what are your modalities and what do you like about that modality versus the others? And kind of yeah, it's fine. Like I said, I'm going to plug IFS every chance I get because it made so much make sense for me on things that weren't chemically driven, but just yeah,
I travel a lot for work, and I carry it's a card deck, basically, but it's CBT cards, basically, cognitive behavioral therapy, and each card has a little exercise on it, right? So there's times where it's 2 in the morning, I'm on the other side of the world for work purposes, and I am not doing well in the anxiety department. I get my CBT deck out, and it helps. So, yep. Yeah, the therapist just, I cannot stress it enough. I think the other thing, Eric, kind of tying back to your do the work thing, I can speak from my own experiences as I went through therapy for a couple of years and ongoing, right? Still, I would get to a point where I'm doing all the things that the therapist is teaching me to do, right? And I start doing better. And then I get a little lazy, I guess. And
yeah.
then she has to remind me, hey, you're not doing that thing, you know?
hmm Regression to the mean. We
Yep.
all do it.
Yep. And
The
surprise,
universe is based on that one law, regression to the mean.
right?
So
You know, and surprise, when I start doing it again, hey, everything gets better, right? Funny how that works. Anyway, um, I want to wrap up here with some just quick resources. We've said therapist again and again and again. Also, don't underestimate the power of family and friend support groups.
mhm.
Um, Eric and I, we bounce stuff off of each other all the time. So, um,
Yes. And
definitely,
I wanna say I know a lot of people are like, "I can't do that." And I get it. I know there are a lot
yeah,
of people who will betray you or belittle you, and they'll make your conditions worse, and I'm sorry. Do what you can to change your circle. I will say, like, I've been going through some really dark times the last few years, and I gotta say, Andy, you're one of the people that has gotten me through that, and my therapist, of course, but there's also people in my circle who have really kept me here, and present and in my life, and not just basically just checking out and being done with it. And so your circle is so important.
It is. It is.
So important. One thing I want to say, I love your box breathing. I'm gonna sorry, I'm completely shifting gears. That's an
That's
ADHD thing, but
all good. All
just
good.
my thought came back. Box breathing. I use a slightly different thing that I think is a little bit easier to remember. And I swear to God, I think I saw it on a television show. I don't think this came from a therapist or anything else, but it was breathe in the roses, blow out the candles. Like
Interesting.
mentally say that while you're doing it. I'm going to breathe in the roses, and you breathe into your nose because you need the smell, right? And the nose has all the filtering to make, filters
Yep.
everything out. But then you blow out the candles and you blow it through your mouth, which gives you the more volume, empty the lungs, and then do it again. And yeah, breathe in the roses, blow out the candles. So sorry. For some reason that seemed really important to say. So go ahead.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. Definitely. I haven't heard that one before, so
Yeah, I swear I think I saw it on a TV show. I don't know where that comes from, but it's
interesting.
great. And I use it all. Like, it's way easier for me than go 1, 2, 3, 4. No, just I'm in front of a rose garden. And then now I'm at a birthday and blow out the candles.
There we go. That works. I'll have to try that one. I hadn't heard that one before. So, and yeah, definitely circle is super important. And same, Eric. I bounce my anxiety stuff off of you all the time. So it's important to have those support systems. Definitely. So the other thing I want to kind of round out with here is mention there's tech communities out there too that is specifically for mental health and tech. The one that comes to mind is, a guy I've done some content with over the years, Paul Croker. He runs a group, fairly new, but it's called 404 Stress Not Found. That's a LinkedIn group. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. You can check that out. They're starting to plan, in-person events and all kinds of different stuff, but it's the whole mental health and tech thing. So definitely take a look at all those. And who knows, you might meet some new friends and help build that circle, right? So we're all in this together, right? So it helps when we all help each other out. So anyway,
And try to go I'm going to, you know what? I would keep that pendulum right in the middle here, buddy. Some of these groups, and this, I'm not talking anything about this group you have mentioned. I'm saying some, like I'm in some social media groups for ADHD and stuff, and they will turn into these echo chambers that will make you worse, not better. Be really
that
careful,
is true.
because we can all get again back into, yeah, man, and we get really fixated on like part of the diagnosis or this behavior that we all have in common. We really get latched onto that, and then it's hard to let it go. Be careful not to let that happen to you, because whatever's going on, you can address it and you can work on it. I'm not going to say you're going to fix it or anything like that. It's just, you don't, you are a human and you have this attribute. You are not ADHD. You are not anxiety.
Right.
You are not depression.
Yep.
That's not who you are. It's just this attribute of you, and you can address it and still be you. And it's great,
Yep.
So I love these communities, but yeah, be really careful that you don't allow them to compound themselves onto you.
That's good feedback. Definitely good feedback. So, well, Eric, I think this episode we've taken the record for longest SysAdmin weekly thus far. So,
Well, I hope it was worth
we
it for everybody. I
I
feel
hope
very strongly about this because I suffered needlessly for a long time,
Yep.
and I would like to save other people from doing that.
Same. And I think the big thing for me is you still run into it in society where some people are of the mindset you don't talk about these things, right? Well, you know what? We
Yeah.
need to normalize talking about this stuff
We need to
because,
normalize talking about it. We need to normalize seeing a therapist. We need to, like, there's nothing wrong with, like, I'm not doing 100% well, so let me just go try to just round the corners off even. You
yep,
don't need, like I said, you don't need a diagnosis for any of this.
yep,
You
for
don't
sure.
need to come out with some label and some pill box. That's not what we're about. It's just making your life better, and it's
Yep,
okay.
yep, for sure. So, well, Eric, thanks for sharing your thoughts and experiences. As always, good talking to you, my friend. And
Thanks for having me.
we could probably do a part 2 someday of this particular episode because I just think about my own experiences. There's so
Mhm.
much that I didn't even bring up in this episode, but
Hey,
someday
absolutely.
in the future. So, but those of you watching, hope you found value in today's episode. Really hope this helped you guys out, right? We'd love to help you with the tech stuff, but also trying to, help you with those soft skills as well. So, and, today's episode was very much a part of that. So again, reminder, you can reach us at contact@sysadminweekly.com for, if you want to share a story or a sysadmin horror story or whatever, right? You can also find the show at, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, all that stuff. If you need a quick link to find all those links, you can always go to www.sysadminweekly.com as well. With that, we'll let you get back to your day. Thanks for spending some time with us. Have a good one. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.